Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and today I'm going to introduce you to Viva Pulse because Viva Pulse is one more tool in your Forms tool belt. So I'm going to focus on four important things. First of all, what is Viva Pulse? Second, where is the data stored? Third, the different access levels options that you have, and finally, the license requirements. So stick around, this is very important. But first, here's my intro video. So first, let's talk about what is Viva Pulse. And as the name suggests, this is to get a pulse of the current situation in your company. So it can be a great tool for leaders to get a quick pulse check on current situations or even help pinpoint what's working well and which areas to focus on over time. The key thing is pulse, which means you want to go ahead and get a quick update. So this is not a place to go and build some large forms, but quick set of questions that you can ask. Great examples is for leaders and manager type of level. So now that you know what Viva Pulse is all about, let's take a look at the architecture on it. Now, I'm not going to deep dive on every nook and cranny of it, but I do want to talk about the two main pieces of the backend architecture of Viva Pulse. First thing is the templates. So the templates are actually stored in Azure Cosmos DB. It's another storage option in the overall Microsoft Cloud infrastructure, but the templates, where I'll show you that there are already some great templates to start with, those are stored in the Azure Cosmos DB. And there's no additional cost of going and getting an Azure Viva Cosmos DB subscription, none of that. Right now, all I want to tell you is that that's actually where the backend data is stored. You are good to go as long as you have that Viva Pulse license. But once you go and create the Viva Pulse and you're actually gathering all that information, all the instances, the pulse feeling and the answers that you get, that is stored in Microsoft Forms. And as you and I already know from the video I just did recently, that the Microsoft Forms data is actually stored in your Office 365 Outlook mailbox. So yes, it is stored in Azure Cosmos DB and it is stored in Microsoft Forms, but the Forms actually is stored in the Outlook Exchange mailbox. So this is the overall architecture of your Viva Pulse. So now let's switch over and talk about the permissions piece, which is basically the different type of roles that you have. So you actually have three different roles that are available. There is the author, the provider, and then the admin. Now, the admin, as you and I know, that's the person who actually goes ahead and manages who has the Viva Pulse access level, permissions, and all of that. That's basically the administrative stuff over there. The author is the one who actually goes and makes a quick Viva Pulse type of a form. And the providers are people like you and me who actually go ahead and fill out that Viva Pulse question that is answered. So these are basically the three different administrative roles that you have. Now, let's also go ahead and talk a little bit about the licensing model. So the required conditions as far as the licenses goes for Viva Pulse is you need to have a valid Viva Pulse license and a valid Microsoft Forms license. And I'll deep dive a little bit into who needs access to that, but these are the two main requirements. So from the actual Microsoft 365 license model that you see, when it comes to actually the Viva Pulse in M365, it says that it is included in your Microsoft 365 plans. But you got to make sure if Viva Pulse also falls into it. Because based on the licenses, you only actually have two options where you can actually go and get the Viva Pulse. And those are the two on the right. So as long as you have a Microsoft Viva Workplace Analytics and Employee Feedback, or you have the entire Viva suite, only one of those two will actually provide you the Viva Pulse option. The two that you see on the left, for them, you do not go ahead and get that. So it's very important that you understand that. And just to double check, if you go and take a look at even your enterprise level accesses or even your user level ones, you will see that over here, the only two Viva Suite options is Viva Connections and Viva Engage. Viva Pulse does not come along with the existing M365 Enterprise 3 or Enterprise 5 or even the F3. Same thing goes even for your business side. It doesn't come along with it. So like I said before, you have only those two other options. Okay, so as far as the licensing model, when it comes to the required conditions, the valid Viva Pulse license is only required by the users who are creating and sending the Pulse requests. It is not required by actually the end users who is filling out the form. That's the very important thing. And we will test this to verify. Also, when it comes to the Microsoft Forms, a user must have an active license to Microsoft Forms to again do the same thing, which is create and send the Pulse request. It's a little easier on the Microsoft Forms license side because it already comes part of your Microsoft 365 license, whether it's enterprise or the business side. The additional cost was actually for the Viva Pulse. The Forms is still required because, like I told you in the architecture design, your Viva Pulse data is actually stored in the Microsoft Forms. So it makes sense why the valid Microsoft Forms license is required. Key thing is it's only required for the people who are creating and sending the Pulse request. And finally, from an integration standpoint, you can directly go ahead and access the browser-based version of Viva Pulse, or there is direct integration into Microsoft Teams, and we will take a look at both of them. So this is an overview of how the architecture, the licensing, and the overview of entire Viva Pulse works. Now let's deep dive into it. So the first thing I want to look at is those different roles. The first one being the administrative side. So if I were to now go ahead and say assign Rosanna Christian as the admin, I can come to my Office 365 Admin Center, or I can go into my Azure Entra ID, either one of those. First, go ahead and search for the user, which in this case is going to be Rosanna. Found Rosanna's account, selecting it, highlighting it. On the bottom over here, I can actually see the roles and administrators. And then on the Admin Center access, if you scroll and select Show by All category, if you go all the way to the bottom, at some point, you will actually see the Viva Pulse Administrator. So if I go and select on it, I can click on Save Changes. Once the saving is completed, you will actually see that now Rosanna is the admin for Viva Pulse. Now keep in mind, Rosanna does not have the license for it. Point I'm trying to make is that the admin, while it might be nice to go and assign them a license so they can do some of their own testing, by default, to do the administrative stuff, they don't really need to have the Viva license. In my case, I actually have a Viva Suite. Rosanna, who is the admin of Viva Pulse, does not have the Viva Suite license. So keep that in mind, that admin by default doesn't need it. However, I recommend it is a nice to have where the admin also has that license. So that's the first one, all right? Second one is we've actually got now the person who's going to make all the Pulse and everything, actually ask those questions. And that is me. So if I go and now click on search for Daniel Christian, I search for myself, see my account, click on it, go over here to the right, actually take a look at my licenses. In my licenses, if I look, I see I do have a Viva Suite license. So that's the license that I've assigned myself, because let's remember, Microsoft 365, the enterprise ones or the business ones, they do not come with the Viva Suite. You need to have at least two of those. One of them was Viva Suite. Finally, you want to take a look as end user. So if I go and now search for Finn, Finn is my dog. If I go and search for his account, Finn now has access to his regular Microsoft 365 licenses. If I go and click over here, you will see that has all the regular licenses that is needed. But if I look over here, Finn does not have a Viva Suite. So based on the Microsoft documentation, Finn should still be able to go ahead and supply the Pulse, or at least give a Pulse information, which is fill out those forms. So we're going to test that. So three of them, we tested it. The admin, who was Rosanna, does not need the license to do an administrative role of the Viva Pulse. User, who is me, I have the license. And then Finn, who's going to be the end user, does not have the license, all right? Keep that in the back of your mind, because when we go and create the demo, we're actually going to go and test all of this. But now let's spend a few minutes taking a look at what this Viva Pulse is all about. So one of the way to access the Viva Pulse Admin Center is through the browser, and you need to go ahead and put in this URL. So if I go and click on it now and click enter, it actually takes us to this Viva Pulse location. And if you've got that admin level access, you know, the one I talked about from Rosanna, for example, then you've got all of these additional features over here, which is to go and do it, the manage piece. And we'll take a look at it in a section. But here is kind of the home screen of Viva Pulse, all right? And it's really great because to get started with, you already have some examples already available. We'll take a look at some building a Pulse in just a few minutes. Now, on the top right, you've got the settings bar. So if I go and click on the settings, you can go and apply these themes. Now, this settings is not part of the Viva Pulse. This settings is actually part of the entire M365, because that's where you actually see the theme section over there. But if I click on this little idea, which is the more options and info, that is the Viva Pulse setting. So here I can go and click on it and do notification preferences. If this is your first time, it takes a few extra seconds for this one to load. And the only checkbox available right now is to get notified by email about Pulse reminders. That's the one of them. Microsoft Teams notification, activity notifications can be managed by the notification settings inside Microsoft Teams. So you've got two levels of notifications over here. Next, if I go back again at the top, I can see on the privacy and cookies, this takes you to another new section, which is talking about the privacy statement. good for you to actually go in and have that information. And then the terms of service and the get support, very familiar, pretty much standard operations procedure for all the other services. Now, I want to take a look at the manage piece. On the manage piece, you've got some great settings over here. So first of all, from the privacy and the confidentiality, you have minimum number of responses required to see feedback. So 5 is the default number of licenses that you need for your Pulse. You've got the option to go ahead and change that. You can go ahead and reduce it down to a minimum of 3. You can't reduce it below 3, so you need at least 3, but you've got the option to go ahead and increase it. Now I'm going to go ahead and just click on it to see how high I can go. Say if I just put in another thing, say if I go and change it and put it as a 0 to make it as 110, if I click enter, it comes back with this, you can only do a range from 3 to 25. That's the key thing, is remember, Pulse is to send to a very small group of people to get some information really fast. Because if you start sending it to a large crowd of people, it takes time to get all that information, and that defeats the whole concept of a Pulse. Pulse is quick and easy way to sense the situation in your company, and a small group of people between the number of 3 and 25 really is a good number to start with. Below that, customize privacy policy statements. Good place to go and put any specific ones for your own company, because you might just want to tell people, hey, don't put any personal or private information, make sure you keep it easy. If you've got all of those situations in your company that you just want to remind of your employees, this is a great place to go and put in that custom link. And then, required diagnostic data is something that Microsoft goes ahead and creates that. If you want to go and toggle that off, great. Optional diagnostic data, if you go and toggle that off, it's up to you. I'm going to go and toggle that off for myself. So this is on the privacy section. On the customization, you've got the option to allow editing of stop questions or allow new questions, editing and creation. Again, places where you can go ahead and submit a new Pulse, and also you can go back and do the editing. So that's basically happens on the customization. Notifications, we already saw that on the top right over here. Same thing is allow users to manage email preferences. The only difference we saw on the notifications here is that it gives you that extra information about Microsoft Teams. Viva resources for Viva Learning. Turn this on to show recommended Viva Learning resources in your Pulse feedback reports. It's a good for those type of Viva Pulses where you want to ask people, hey, how's your training going? And if you want to give your users a link to some kind of training, then Viva Learning links are good over there. And then delete user data. An important information over here is that, say you've gone ahead and gathered some Pulse, but for whatever reason, people went and shared their personal private information, and that can be a solid security violation problem for you, and you want to immediately go and delete it. This is where you go and do that, is come over here, search for either the health deletion or specific user level data, find it, delete it, and you're good to go. And then finally, the custom support page. Link to a custom support page, same thing. Remember previously in the privacy section, you can go and put in a link over here. This is if somebody is having struggle with Viva and you want them to go and say, hey, here is where you go and submit a ticket, providing them a link. This is where you do a custom support page. So this is now how the whole manage and basically the overall Viva field looks like. The home page, we looked at the manage section, but now I want to quickly go ahead and build a Viva Pulse. So as I was starting to create my first Viva Pulse, I like that there were already some templates option over here. I can go and click on this button, which is send a pulse, but you've got template options over here. So let's just pretend that I'm going to actually go and select either one of them, the templates over here. And it says, hey, request feedback with research based on blah, 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 blah. All right, I'm going to go and click on get started. Same thing shows over here is that you can actually go and select some of these templates. And I like the breaking down grouping that it has. It says for managers and leaders or for project team leads. And it already tells you, hey, this is a 2-minute one. There is 6 questions over here versus a 1-minute one with 2 questions. And it's telling you what is the whole premise of it, whether it's for a team member success, or it is specifically focusing on a managers or the managers, or just to get a pulse on what the hybrid working situation is all about. Anything about, hey, this is our new change management support. Can you go ahead and give us a little update on that? And then for project team leads, project team success or post-project debriefing. That's also great examples. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and say, I'm going to select the well-being. Now, I'm selecting a well-being because if you look at it, I don't have an option to go and start from scratch. And just to be sure, if I go back to my home page, if I select on send a pulse, assuming that that's letting me to make it customized, it doesn't. You click on that and it comes to one of these places which says choose a question template. So it is already giving you a good starting point to work with. So pick and choose something which is very similar to what you want to start, because once you're in, you have the option to go and customize it. And that's what we'll do. So like I said before, I'm going to go and do a well-being one, 1 minute, 3 questions. So as I select it, now we are done from the choose a template and we are in the customize template. Now remember, the templates, all of these templates that we are loading, this is coming from that Azure Cosmos DB. Remember, I just showed you that in the original slide deck. This data, which are the templates, are stored in the Azure Cosmos DB, all right? So keep that in mind. Again, remember, no additional subscription is needed for that. All falls under the overall licensing that you use for the Viva Pulse, but that Azure Cosmos DB is where the data is coming from. So let's take a look at it. First of all, the title is called Wellbeing. I can go ahead and change that. So I can go and say Wellbeing for Christian Family Consulting Service. That's the name I can put in. I have the ability to go and tweak that. Already, there are 3 questions that are added over here. Important thing about the questions is the type of questions and the answers that you can put in, the formatting options. Because as I see this, immediately Microsoft Forms light bulb goes in my mind. And as you know, I've done a whole bunch of videos on it. If you're interested, I've put the link in the description below. So I felt that this was the look and feel of it, but couple of limitations over here. One was, if I go and say add a question, I only get these 3 options, which is rating, multiple choice, and then open text. Great options, because remember the whole concept, Pulse, quickly, fast, get information, only limited to 3 and 25 users. This is not a heavy form building service. It is directly to go and get a Pulse. So I think that these 3 are pretty good to go. And therefore over here on these 3 questions that you have, that's all it is. It's like for the first question, it says, I'm able to cope effectively with work-related stress. I can go ahead and it's already asking me, which are the ones that you want. This basically falls under the different multiple choice options. And then you've also got the different ratings. I can always edit it and change it if I want. But in this case, I'm going to keep it as is. Changing also means I can go ahead and move it. Do I want to move it down? Do I move it up? But you get the overall idea, all right? This is the one that is here. Next thing also is that I'm treated fairly at work. Same type of questions. If I go and click on it, you can see that each of these, for lack of a better term, cards that we have, you've got the question name, you've got the question text, scale labels. You can go ahead and add these other questions and follow on them. You basically understand what is the question text versus what is the follow-up question options. This is basically how it's differentiated specifically in the Viva Pulse. Now, after you do all of these existing out-of-the-box ones, right? Remember that I already had 3. If I were to go ahead and say add another rating one, if I click on rating, it gives me already this kind of a card which is over here, this little card location. It's telling me what is the question name. So I'm going to go and say rate my overall experience as an employee. Now this is just the question name, so you don't have to make it that descriptive. You do have to make a description in actually the question text. So I'm going to do that. Now, when I go and say, okay, I want to change the labels, I do not have the option to change the labels. What that basically means is that you can only go ahead and put in by default from disagree, the strongly disagree to strongly agree. But here's the thing, it only shows you number 1 and 5. If I click on done, it automatically goes and gives you all 5 of them, and it's actually automatically taking care of it, making it very easy for you. So keep that in mind, is that you don't have the options, especially for this option over here, which is to go and put in the rating. You only have these 5 ratings. You cannot go and tweak it or anything. But keep in mind, this is Viva Pulse, quick, easy, fast way. And then all the other ones are pretty straightforward. Multiple choice, you've got the way to put in a question. Here you have the options to go and add more multiple choices. And then for the last one, it is all open text. Open text also means simple text. So you basically just have to ask the questions over here. I'm going to say sample. And if I go and click on done, here it gives you already this entire option to put in, leave your answer, right? Good text over here, rich text, good text option over here. Put in multiple lines, already done for you, quick and easy. So these were how you go ahead and add all 3 of them. Now, I already like my existing demo, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. These are how you delete it. It's basically going to double check with you, say, hey, are you sure you want to delete it? In my case, yes, I don't really need all these 3 new ones because I was just doing that as an example. So here we go. I'm done now with building my nice Viva Pulse. So section 1 is completed. I chose the template. Section 2, I customized it. Next thing I want to do is go and click on next. So it says, do you want to disregard the changes that you make? It's asking me, hey, do you want to disregard the changes? Basically, those 3 new questions I asked, I said disregard is good. Now I'm finally coming in to the last piece over here. Now remember, I had selected the initial one of at least sending it out to 3. So I'm going to make sure I get it at least out to these people. I'm going to go ahead and say to Finn, so I'll do that. I'm going to go ahead and say other ones to Don, and I'm going to keep it to 3 right now. And also let's read this text. It's like, finalize the request. Take a moment to review the details below and ensure they are correct, which is basically any personal note or who you're requesting the feedback to. Because it says, once your request is sent, recipients will have 7 days to provide feedback. They will receive reminders to respond individually or in teams. And then you can go and put in a personal note. If everything looks good, go and click on Send Pulse. And now it is actually going and start sending it over here. Everything on this side is done, and it comes to this page. It says your pulse is now live and will close in 7 days. And it is now giving you an option to go and say, hey, here is a copy link. Here are the set of people it is shared with. Do you want to go and modify your request? It's giving you that link as well. I'll go and click on it. It goes ahead and loads your request, and here's basically what it gives me. It gives me an overview. It says that you have not reached the minimum threshold of 3 responses to view feedback, and it's also telling me who you've got invited to. I've got the option to click on my Pulse actions. I can extend the deadline. This is an important thing to know. If I click on the extend deadline, the default 7 days. Now remember I said you have only 7 days. The default 7 days can be extended, where it says you can provide a 3-day extension for this request. That is it. So keep in mind that Pulse by default gives you 7 days. You can extend that into 10 days, but to add that extra days, you got to go ahead and first publish off that entire form, then come to your Pulse action, click on the edit deadline, and then go ahead and fill in basically this new thing. All right. So basically keep that in mind. Afterwards, I'll go and do the extending deadline. It automatically went and added those 3 days. So it was originally August 21st, bumped it up to August 24th, and now we're good to go. I at least have 10 days to do that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to now go ahead and now fill out the form. All right. Now, when I come to the home page of Viva Pulse, now we are able to see all my pulses, all right, the ones that I've created. It also shows me if any that are in draft, anything that is shared specifically with me. I haven't, remember, I'm only the one who have created it, which is the sending it. I didn't share anyone with me. Nobody else shared it with me. That's why my share with me is currently empty. And then requested from me, again, it is done. You know, the pulses were basically all sent over here. But now what I can do is verify, can the other people, which in our case was Finn, can Finn go ahead and actually fill out that form? Remember, Finn doesn't have that license, but can he still fill it out? Well, let's go find out. So I have signed in as Finn. Remember, just to verify, here is Finn's account. If I go and take a look over there on the left side, yep, there's Outlook. Click on Outlook. And the first thing I see right over here is the message which was sent by me. I was the one who created it, but here it is. Here is actually the Viva Pulse that came in through email. All right, now I'm going to go do that final test. Okay, I'm going to go and click on provide feedback. Another tab opened up on the right. Remember, this is the one signed in as Finn. The Viva Pulse is actually loading, and it says Daniel Christian requested well-being for Christian Family Consulting Service, or CFCS feedback. It is a 1 minute to complete, but make sure you fill it out by October 21st. I'm going to go and click on Get Started. First question: I'm able to cope effectively with work-related stress. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to give it a 3. Next, now keep that in mind. It only showed me 1 at a time. Because I finished the first one, it showed me the second one. Now you and I know that there is 3, because it's actually telling me 1 out of 3. We know 3, but it waits till you finish that one, which basically tells me that each and every question is mandatory in the Pulse. You don't have the option to go and say if this is required or not. In Microsoft Forms, we did, but in Pulse, we do not. Why? Because this is Pulse. Quick, easy, and fast. All right. So next one. What could help in this area? I'm going to say more flexibility in when and where I work. So I like that. Click on next. And now finally on the last one is that I am, I am treated fairly at work. I'm going to say strongly agree. Click on that. And then finally, do you recommend to improve in this area? Provide feedback more extensionally. Okay, click on next and select next for all of them, because it's only until you do the next do you actually see the count which is working clearly. So keep that in mind. Now I'm going to click on submit answers. Once I submit it, it says, hey, feedback is submitted. Thanks for taking a few minutes to help your colleague grow and improve. Click on done. And the moment I finish that, it is done from the Finn's side. All right. Key thing though, Finn does not have the license. And so the documentation of Microsoft stands true. The end user does not need the Pulse license, is only the one who's creating it. And Finn, as an end user, can come and basically take a look at any time that these were actually the Viva Pulses that were sent to me, and then I can go and do all of this. It is also good that it's telling Finn that, hey, you don't have full access to the features of Viva Pulse. Please contact your administrator for assistance. This is just a nice way of saying, hey, you don't have the license to actually go and create the pulses, but Pulse is created such that end users can go and submit them. They don't feel licenses, right? So it's just a good FYI here. But we went ahead and proved that very important point that who all needs the licenses, and it's only the Pulse creators. It is not the end users. So I'm now back in Viva Pulse as the person who created the actual pulse. And over here, you can see that the satisfaction is 100%, which means 3 out of 3 people provided the feedback. So it's completed. And over here, you can quickly do a rating of all the questions. So this was basically the first questions about the resiliency. You can go and see for all 3 of them, all the 3 questions. If I click on the right side, it actually gives me a much more deeper overview of what the questions were related to what the team had selected. And then it gives me an overall favorability over here. So what I like is that out of the box, it gives all the managers and the supervisors and basically all the executive people a quick overview of what the pulse is based on the 3 questions that was done. I really like this visual representation of the pulse, really makes it very useful. And finally, inside Microsoft Teams, you can go ahead and do that as well. So here again is the person who is me. I went and actually created it. If I go and now see the actual apps in my app section, if I go and now search for Viva Pulse, I am able to go ahead and find my Viva Pulse add-on app. Now remember, in your company, if you don't see this or if you don't have access to go ahead and add it, you might actually go and see an option over here to go ahead and request access. That means it just goes to your Teams admin team. They will go and approve it, and then it all shows up on this side. All right. So just keep in mind that on your things, on your company, things might be a little different. But all in all, we did it through the browser side, but you've got the exact same access level to go ahead and do it directly inside Teams. And it does go ahead and respect your access level. So in my case, I'm actually seeing it as me, the person who actually went ahead and signed in. I'm the one who's able to go and see it. And I can go and right click on that. I can go and pin it. Basically, this is all there for me. But say if I go ahead and now switch over back to Finn. Finn was the end user. This is Finn's access inside Teams. When Finn goes to the app over there and searches for Viva Pulse, Vin will also have to go ahead and get approval for that. So it goes and gets the ad. Either way, it could also be pinned in. Point I'm trying to make is that when Finn comes in, Finn only sees home. Remember, when it was me, I saw home and manage because remember, I have the access to go and create all the pulses as well, while Finn is only the end user. So Finn basically just sees the home and sees all the pulses that access to. Even over here inside Teams, it says you don't have access to the full features of Viva Pulse. Basically, all the permissions, even the granular level permissions, they apply inside Teams as well, thanks to the Viva Pulse. So Viva Pulse definitely is a WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get, a type of a form building solution. It is quick and easy. You don't have a lot of flexibility to go in and change it. You only have the limit of extending that pulse time to either 7 days or even extend it up to 3 more days, which is 10 days. That's it. Now, I do like the way that it actually goes and gives you combos. Basically, when you have a question, it can actually ask you 2 questions. So there was the rating, and then you can go and put in any of the selection that you want, which was the choice or the rating, and then you can go and put an answer. So I like the way that card effect is, but overall, pretty neat. Even the stats at the end are also pretty neat. Now, in the next video, I'm going to spend a little bit more time doing the side-by-side comparison with Viva Pulse and Microsoft Forms, because even though Viva Pulse had only 3 of them, if you wanted to use Microsoft Forms for that, what are the side-by-side comparisons? So stay tuned for that video. And as always, keep using Microsoft Viva Pulse. Hello, hello, hello. So if you like this video, go ahead and click on that subscribe button and smash that like button. Also, if you have a few extra seconds, can you go ahead and put in a comment? Either say something nice or give me ideas for my next video. And until then, see ya.